I stood at the end of Maple Street holding my duffel bag, staring at the empty lot where my mother's house used to be. The mailbox was still there. Crooked, rusted, her name fading in the sun. But everything else was gone. My name is Daniel Carter, and I spent 11 months overseas thinking about that house. The white porch where my mother used to shell peas. The kitchen that smelled like cinnamon every Sunday. The room upstairs where she kept my father's things, untouched since he passed. I called it home because it was the only one I'd ever known. My older brother Ryan stayed behind to look after it, or so I thought. I came back to nothing but silence, and a brother who wouldn't answer his phone. The cab dropped me at the corner just after dawn. I could see Maple Street from there, the dogwood trees, the cracked sidewalk, the place I'd been picturing for 11 months. But the house wasn't there. I stood with my duffel at my feet, staring at dirt. Just dirt, and bricks scattered like teeth. The mailbox was still standing. Crooked, her name faded but readable. Everything else was gone. Mrs. Brennan was on her porch, coffee and watching me. I raised my hand, halfway to a wave. She didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at me like I was a stranger. I walked the edge of the lot slowly. My boots crunched over gravel and ash. There was no sign, no notice, no explanation. Just empty air where the porch used to be. My hands were shaking when I pulled out my phone. I dialed Ryan. It rang once, then nothing. You've reached Ryan. I hung up. Tried again. Same thing. Voicemail, just like the last 20 times. I stood there in the cold, holding my phone like it might still ring back, like someone might tell me this was a mistake. But no one did. Mrs. Brennan was still on her porch when I crossed the street. She'd been there the whole time watching me stand in the dirt where my mother's house used to be. She was holding a coffee mug in both hands. Steam rising slow into the cold. I climbed her steps carefully, like I was approaching something fragile. Mrs. Brennan. She didn't look at me, just stared into her cup. What happened to the house? Her mouth opened, closed. She shifted her weight. Your brother came by last fall, she said quietly. He said you knew. My chest tightened. I didn't know. I hadn't known anything. Knew what? I asked. She finally looked at me then. Her eyes were tired, sad in a way that made me feel like I'd already lost something I couldn't name. That it was sold, she said. The word sat between us. Sold when? October, I think. Maybe late September. She paused. They tore it down about a month later. I felt the cold seep into my jacket, into my skin. Who bought it? She shook her head. I don't know. Some company. They didn't say much. I wanted to ask more, wanted her to tell me this was a mistake that Ryan had explained, that there was paperwork, that I'd missed a letter or a call, but she was already stepping back toward her door. I'm sorry, Daniel, she said softly, and then she went inside. I stood there alone on her porch. The wind picked up. It moved through the empty lot across the street, stirring dust where the garden used to be. I could still see it, the white paint, the screen door, my mother in the window. But it was gone, and no one had told me. I didn't change out of my uniform. I drove straight to the county clerk's office downtown, still smelling like the plane and recycled air, and something I couldn't name. The building was old. Marble floors, high ceilings. It echoed when I walked. The woman behind the desk looked up when I came in. She smiled. The kind people give soldiers. Polite, grateful, distant. Can I help you? I gave her the address. My voice came out quieter than I meant. I need to see the property records. She nodded and typed something into her computer. The keys clicked softly. I stood there with my hands at my sides, trying not to look like I was falling apart. It took less than a minute. Here we go, she said. She turned the screen toward me. Sold 6 months ago, September 16th. I stared at the date. September 16th? I was in Kandahar, sleeping for hours a night, counting days till I could come home. Who sold it? I asked. She scrolled down. Ryan Carter. Looks like he was listed as sole owner. My chest tightened. What about Daniel Carter? She looked again. Shook her head gently. No, just Ryan. I didn't move. Couldn't. She pointed at the screen. Buyers listed here. Hillcrest Development LLC. I pulled out a pen from the counter. It barely worked. I had to press hard, just to get the ink to come through. My hand cramped as I wrote the name down on the back of a gas station receipt. Were there any disputes? I asked. Any flags? Anything unusual? She looked at me with something close to sympathy. No, hun. Everything was legal. I folded the receipt, thanked her, and walked back out into the cold. Legal, she said, but it didn't feel right. Ryan's apartment was on the east side of town, a low brick building squeezed between the highway and a laundromat. I'd only been there once, right before I deployed. It looked smaller now, worn down. I parked in the lot and sat for a minute, watching the second-floor walkway. Unit Dose, his truck wasn't there. I climbed the stairs slowly. My boots echoed on the metal steps. When I reached his door, I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Harder this time. Still nothing. Behind me, a door cracked open. A woman with gray hair and a cigarette looked out. He's gone, she said. I turned. What? Your friend. He moved out 2 weeks ago. Didn't say where. I stared at her. She didn't blink. Yushua. Watched him load the truck myself. She pulled the cigarette from her lips. Took 3 trips. I nodded. She closed the door. I tried the handle anyway. Locked. I stood there for a while, not sure what to do. Then I sat down on the top step, my back against the railing. The highway hummed below. Constant, endless. I pulled out my phone and opened the thread I hadn't touched in months. Messages from my mother. Dozens of them. I scrolled slowly, past the short ones, the reminders, the be safe and love you. Then I stopped, 2 years ago, right before I left. Both my boys. I'm so proud. I read it twice. 3 times. I closed my eyes and pressed the phone against my forehead. The air was cold. The metal step bit into my legs. And for the first time since I came home, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost. And the brother who was gone. The motel room smelled like old carpet and bleach. I sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open, the glow lighting up the dark. I typed in Hillcrest Development LLC. Nothing came up, just a business registration filed 8 months ago. No website, no address, no names. I kept searching. An hour later, I found it buried in a cached forum post about local real estate closings. Someone had mentioned a lawyer, Philip Cord. Said he handled deals for Hillcrest. I wrote the name down on the motel notepad. By morning, I'd found his office. Downtown, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a tax service. The kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. I parked across the street and stared at the door for a while. Then he went in. The secretary looked up from her desk. She was older. Reading glasses on a chain. Can I help you? I need to see Philip Cord. She glanced at her schedule. Do you have an appointment? No. He's with a client right now. I nodded. I'll wait. She hesitated. Looked at me, still in my uniform, duffel at my feet. It might be a while. That's fine. I sat down in the corner, hands folded in my lap. The chair was hard. The room was quiet except for the hum of the copier in the back. I didn't move, didn't check my phone. Just sat there, waiting. People came and went. A man in a suit, a woman with paperwork. They glanced at me, but didn't ask questions. The secretary typed. Answered calls. Pretended not to notice me, but I wasn't leaving. Not until I got answers. So I stayed. I'm primera. Ite. Philip Cord finally opened his door just after noon. He was older than I expected. Gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that gave nothing away. Mr. Carter, I stood, picked up my duffel. He gestured me inside. His office was small, wooden desk, stacks of folders, a window that looked out onto the alley. I sat across from him. He folded his hands and waited. I need to know about the sale, I said. The house on Maple Street. He nodded slowly. I handled that closing. Yes. My brother sold it. That's correct. My throat tightened. He didn't have the right. Cord's expression didn't change. Actually, he did. Your brother had full ownership after your mother passed. I shook my head. She left it to both of us. He paused. Then he reached for a file on the corner of his desk. He opened it carefully and slid a single page across to me. This was filed 3 years ago. Primera looked down. It was a quitclaim deed, transferring the property from our mother to Ryan Carter, sole owner. Her signature was at the bottom. I stared at it. It looked like hers. The slant, the lupin in the sea. but something about it didn't sit right. When was this signed? I asked. Junho 2020, 3 years ago. Right after Dad died. I touched the edge of the paper. My hands were shaking. Did you witness this? No. It was notarized separately. I pulled the page closer, studied the ink, the pressure, the way her name trailed off at the end. Cord watched me quietly. Everything was legal, Mr. Carter, he said. I'm sorry. I folded the paper, put it in my pocket, and walked out without another word. But I didn't believe him. Something was wrong. I just had to prove it. I took a photo of the document before I left. My hands were shaking so badly I had to steady the phone against the desk. Outside, the air hit me like cold water. I couldn't breathe. Right. I sat down on a bench near the curb and pulled up the photo. Zoomed in on the signature. On the date, on the witness line, at the bottom. Eleanor Finch, Notary Public. I didn't recognize the name Primeracia Ricci Italiano. Found her in 30 seconds. A notary office on the east side of town. Open till 5. I was there by 3. The office was quiet. Just a desk, a filing cabinet, and a woman with silver hair and reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. She looked up when I walked in. Can I help you? I pulled out my phone, showed her the photo. Do you remember notarizing this? She leaned in, squinted. Then her face softened. Oh, yes, I do. My chest tightened. You're sure? I am. She looked at me carefully. You're one of the sons. I nodded. She set the phone down gently. Your mother seemed tired that day, she said. Your brother did most of the talking. I swallowed hard. Did she seem confused? Eleanor's expression changed. Something quiet and sad moved across her face. She looked away. I thought about that after, she said softly. What do you mean? She signed it, but she kept looking at your brother, like she was waiting for him to tell her it was okay. The words landed heavy. Did you ask her if she understood what she was signing? Eleanor nodded. I did. She said yes. She paused, but her hands were shaking. I stood there, frozen. Eleanor folded her hands on the desk. I'm sorry, she whispered. I left without saying anything else. Because now I knew she hadn't wanted this. I went back to Maple Street that evening. The streetlights were just coming on. The air smelled like rain. I walked door to door. Knocked. Waited. Most people didn't answer. A few cracked the door, shook their heads, said they didn't know anything. Then I reached Mr. Alvarez's house, 3 doors down from where ours used to be. He opened the door all the way. Danny Carter, he said softly. Come in. His living room was warm, pictures on the walls. The smell of coffee still in the air. He sat across from me, hands resting on his knees. I'm sorry about your mama, he said. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. I need to ask you something, I said finally, about my brother. Mr. Alvarez's face grew still. He came around a lot those last few months, he said. Always had papers for her to sign. My throat tightened. Did she understand what she was signing? I looked down. She wasn't herself toward the end. Danny. Forgot names. Repeated things. I'd see her standing in the yard sometimes. Just last. I felt something crack inside me. I knew she'd been forgetful. She'd told me once on the phone, laughed it off, said it was just age. But Ryan never told me it was serious. I saw the demolition crew in February, Mr. Alvarez continued. Your brother was there. Standing in the driveway, watching them tear it down. I couldn't move. What did he look like? Mr. Alvarez met my eyes. He didn't look sad, son. He paused. He looked relieved. I sat there in the silence, the weight of it pressing down. Mr. Alvarez touched my shoulder as I left, but I barely felt it. All I could see was Ryan, standing there, watching our mother's house fall. Mrs. Brennan's grandson stopped me on the sidewalk 2 days later. Said he saw Ryan the week before the demolition, loading boxers into a storage unit on the south end of town. I was there by sunset. The facility sat behind a chain-link fence, rows of orange metal doors stretching back into the dim light. No attendant, just a keypad and a camera that probably didn't work. I didn't have a unit number, so I walked. Slowly, reading every name on every lock. The air was cold. My breath fogged in front of me. Tem primera C. W Italiano Unit 37R. Carter. The lock was cheap. Thin metal. The kind you buy at a hardware store for $10. I went back to my truck, got the tire iron from behind the seat. It took one hit. The lock snapped, clattered to the concrete. I pulled the door open. Inside were boxers, stacked, neat, and careful. I knelt down and opened the first one. Photo albums. Pictures of me and Ryan as kids. Mom smiling in the kitchen, Dad in his uniform. The next box had his military medals, folded flag, citation papers. Then I found her Bible. The one she read every morning at the table. Pages soft and worn. I held it for a long time, and then I saw the lockbox. Small, gray, tucked at the bottom beneath an old quilt. I pulled it out. It wasn't locked. I opened it. Inside was cash. Stacks of it. Rubber-banded. 50s and 100s. I counted it twice. $87,000. I sat back on my heels, staring. This was what he'd taken. What he'd hidden. Not just the house. Everything. I closed the box, put it under my arm, and walked out into the night. Ryan had made a mistake. He left a trail, and now I had proof.
My phone rang just after midnight. I was sitting on the motel bed, staring at the lockbox on the table. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew it was him. I answered, "Daniel." His voice was flat, distant, like he was reading from a script. "You shouldn't have gone to the lawyer." I didn't say anything, just listened to him breathe on the other end. "Why, Ryan?" Silence. Then she wanted me to have it. The house, everything. My jaw tightened. "She left it to both of us." "You were never around," he said, voice sharper now. "I was the one who stayed. I took care of her." I closed my eyes. "What about the money?" The line went quiet. I could hear him shift. A door closing somewhere in the background. "She didn't need it anymore," he said finally. His voice was cold, and neither did you. I stood up, hands shaking. "I'm going to the police," he laughed. Short, bitter, almost a cough. "Good luck with that." I could picture him now, leaning against a wall somewhere, arms crossed. That same look he used to give me when we were kids. Like I didn't understand how the world worked. Everything I did was legal. Danny, I had her sign it, I sold it. I kept what was mine, it wasn't yours, it is now. The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, listening to the silence. My brother, the person I grew up with, gone. I set the phone down slowly, looked at the lockbox, at the photo albums stacked beside it, at everything he tried to erase. He thought he'd won, but he was wrong, because I wasn't done yet. I didn't go to the police, not right away. Instead, I went back to the empty lot one last time. The sun was just coming up. The street was quiet. No cars, no voices, just the wind moving through the trees. I stood where the porch used to be, closed my eyes, tried to remember what it looked like. Then I knelt down, and I started digging. My hands pushed through dirt and ash and bits of broken concrete. My nails scraped against something hard. I pulled it free, a piece of tile, small, chipped, still flecked with blue paint. From the kitchen floor, I brushed it off, held it up to the light, and I put it in my pocket. 3 months later, I found a lawyer, a woman who listened without interrupting. She said I had a case undue influence, elder abuse, fraudulent transfer. It took a year, paperwork, courtroom hearings, where Ryan sat across the room and never looked at me. But the judge ruled in my favor. Ryan was ordered to repay everything, the house, the money, all of it. I didn't rebuild. Instead, I bought a dogwood tree, small, just a sapling. I planted it right where the porch used to be. Mrs. Brennan watched from across the street. She didn't say anything, just nodded. I go back every year now. The tree's grown tall. Its branches reach wide in the spring. White blossoms like the ones my mother used to cut and put in a vase by the window. I sit beneath it sometimes, and I remember. Ryan and I never spoke again. I don't know where he is now, and I don't need to, because I'm home right here, where it all began.